Hey everybody, Hank Linderman here. It's 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central. Here at Getting Angry. You can see I'm at my secure, undisclosed location. I'm so glad you're here. I had quite a weekend. I'd planned to take it a little bit easy. And then I got word that our new signs were in. So I drove up to Louisville and picked up the signs and drove the first batch of them over to Danville. So, by the way, if you're in the Danville area, get in touch with Julie Pease or any of the folks at Indivisible or at the Danville, the Boyle County Democratic Party. And that means folks in the East County. So Garrett, Jessamine, Mercer, and so on. You should be able to get your signs there. Then yesterday morning, got up early and drove another batch of signs up to Davis County. So Davis County has signs up at, what do we say? Up at the headquarters for the Democratic Party there in Owensboro. Anyway, so much to talk about today. A little bit of bad news. We were going to have John McPhee here today, and John, unfortunately, is not able to make it, but he's got a very good excuse. And his very good excuse is that he's recording Michael McDonald today. So this was the only day Michael had available. So we thought that would be okay for him to reschedule. So he'll either be, we hope, either Wednesday or Friday. And tomorrow we're going to have the return of Dr. Greg.
Greg Adams, good Dr. Adams, ask Dr. Greg.
And Greg will be joined by with John Winkleman, who was here last week. And they're going to talk about transitioning to a single-payer system, which is my suspicion that that's what we're going to have to do. And the way that we've dealt with the virus has been so poor that, we may not really have a choice. I think that there's really not a way that we can get out of this virus without making sure everyone is healthy. So I don't see a way around it myself, but I'm curious to see if anyone else has got a good idea. We talk all the time about Going Godzilla. And what does Going Godzilla mean? We're talking about the virus. We're talking about going Godzilla on this virus and doing whatever we can do to get this virus under control. And there are a lot of nations that have done really, really well. And tomorrow maybe I'll show you how well the nation of Vietnam has done so well that it would be like having only 300 people or so die here in the United States instead of the over 180,000, and no end in sight. It doesn't seem to be really going anywhere. But anyway, let's read some. The term, by the way, Going Godzilla, comes from one of my favorite websites that's called Naked Capitalism. And nakedcapitalism.com coined that phrase, and I completely stole it. So credit to Naked Capitalism. Anyway, they did a little bit of a commentary on this because Joe Biden has said that he would shut down the government if scientists advised him to do it. And they had some bones to pick over the way he phrased it, but the point is that doctors are advising us that we could shut this virus down if we would only do what other nations have done. And in the response for that, Donald Trump apparently tweeted that Biden doesn't have a clue of what it will do to the economy. Well, we do actually have a clue of what it will do if we go aggressively against this virus. And it's going to mean shutting down the country for a month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So here's what they said about this, and it's only fair that we leave Godzilla up there just so you can get a look at him. In essence, a 2-month shutdown would bring wage labor and non-speculative capital accumulation non-speculative capital accumulation. I got to think about that. To a halt for 2 months. In order to make that work, if we defined work as minimizing human suffering, or more concretely, to avoid breadlines, riots, and other forms of mass distress, we would need universal, concrete, material benefits for 2 months. That's what the working class would need to replace its lost wages, and businesses would need to replace their lost revenue. So that's what we would have to do. Again, from naked capitalism. I don't think the political class is prepared to countenance that simply because such a policy would raise too many awkward questions. But anything less, and you will have workers breaking quarantine to feed their families. And of course, this leads out how to feed the country, say, given our optimized, no slack supply chain. So that's the case for going Godzilla. That's the case against it, I guess. The case for it is that we could get the virus under control, and much of the rest of the world has it under control. We don't. We just simply don't. And I guess we should start by looking at our numbers. Let's start by having a look at the daily numbers. This is again from yesterday, and we should be completely used to this by now, that the numbers, they get unsteady over the weekend. So USA only added 32,000 cases yesterday, which is a reduction. We certainly hope that's the way it continues, but we're unfortunately too used to this. After months and months of watching this chart, we see it dip the Monday and even Tuesday, and then comes roaring back on Wednesday. 430 deaths, tragic, just tragic. That's more than many nations have had. I believe South Korea had a total of 300 deaths out of 51 million people. So notice, though, India has now jumped up in the terms of new cases, and India is the largest democracy in the world. So the two largest democracies in the world, India and the USA, are the ones that are leading the charge here. Brazil, of course, also looks to be a bit out of control, but we'll just see how this goes. But so far, we don't have control of the virus. Not news to any of us. Look at California. Still remains on top in terms of newest cases, in terms of total cases. They appear to be getting it somewhat under control, but again, it's the weekend. Notice down there in a small state like Tennessee is a smaller state, much smaller, and look at their amount of new cases, 1,800. That's pretty serious, I think. Most amount of total deaths still, of course, stays in New York and New Jersey, but Florida, Texas, and California are continuing to move up. This is kind of interesting. This is from the Twitter, and if you're not familiar with the Twitter is you got a limited amount of characters to say what you're going to say, something like 140 characters. And Twitter experts, please let me know. But the cases or the discussion on Twitter is now here. What I'm showing you is about Sturgis. And that's a visualization of cell phones that had been in Sturgis for the motorcycle race or the motorcycle gathering in Sturgis. And notice how incredible that is. That's spread out all over the country. So we're going to see some serious results as of that. This is a tweet from Thomas Frank. And Thomas Frank, of course, wrote the wonderful book, The People Know, that I'm reading right now. I think you would enjoy it. If you aren't aware of Thomas Frank, do a little bit of work and check him out. He's wonderful. He does the best description of populism, defense of populism, and an understanding of the forces that are lined up against it. Populism, to Thomas Frank, is nothing more than political change that comes from the ground up, from the people on up. And this is a cartoon that shows a swarthy Italian with a dagger labeled debt repudiation that has murdered U.S. credit, is killing U.S. Killing the U.S. credit system. Anyway, we'll move on. Now, look at this. This is a vote that went on last week. House Vote 182 prohibits changes to the Postal Service operations. Now, this passed in the House, and this was, I bet, led by Speaker Pelosi. And notice we even had some 26 Republicans join the 231 Democrats, so it clearly passed. But interestingly, the guy that I'm running against, a guy named Brett Guthrie, voted against it. Not sure what he was thinking, but he voted against this idea of leaving the post office alone during the pandemic. So what can we say? What can we say? Well, what we can say is we could have a look at what else Brett Guthrie is up to. So let's have a look at that. This is from a website called Sludge. And that's a picture of Brett Guthrie on the right. And he sits on a board of his family business, and he's in a position to influence policy. And this is from that article. I'll read a little bit of it right now. A Kentucky congressman is a board member of his family's auto components business, and he's in a position to influence federal policy that could help that company's interests. I'm going to stop right here for a second because I want you all to understand that when Brett Guthrie entered Congress in, was it 2009? That was his first year. His financial statement, according to OpenSecrets.org, was that his net worth was around $421,000. Not that long ago. He's in his 12th year. Republican Brett Guthrie, who has represented Kentucky's 2nd District since 2009, is an uncompensated board member of Trace Diecast, a company that makes aluminum-based engine, transmission, and driveline components for the automotive industry. He has as much as $10.5 million invested in the company through equity and trusts. Now, I'm surprised. I would have thought that if he had equity in a company, that would show up in his personal financial statement. I would think it should. Anyway, Trace Diecast received 3 small business administration loans from 2010 to 2012, all while Guthrie was a House member, totaling close to $5.6 million, small business administration loans to a company that's owned by a sitting congressman. Okay. All at a cost of $403,000 to the federal government. Someone told me recently, I can't swear this is true, but apparently the Nancy Pelosi's brother is part of a company that received $300,000 in PPP funds, and Fox News apparently went berserk over that. Well, this is $5.6 million just in small business administration loans at a cost that cost the government $400,000. Wow. In the most recent session of Congress, Guthrie was part of the Congressional Aluminum Caucus, which has members, quote, with an interest in supporting aluminum jobs in their districts, end quote. According to co-chair Suzanne Delbene, who's a Democrat from Washington, he's also a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, which has jurisdiction of interstate and foreign commerce, motor vehicle safety, among other things. Guthrie has a clear conflict of interest with his official duties. Craig Holman, who's a government affairs lobbyist at consumer advocacy nonprofit Public Citizen, told Sludge. Sludge is the website this story is from. Serving on the corporate board is only one element of this conflict. The board service provides Guthrie with potential insider information, which he can use to cash in. Now remember, when Guthrie entered Congress, he had a net worth of around $422,000 in 2009. This looks like to me that he's got substantially more personal wealth in the period of time that he has been serving in Congress. In fact, he has also filed an amended financial statement that no one has seen yet. It hasn't come out yet. It's probably due here pretty soon. But and he also, interestingly, according to the Bowling Green Daily News, he reported recently, in fact, it was the Friday before the July 4th weekend, he reported that Trace had gotten $4.4 million in PPP loans. We think that may be the largest amount of PPP money given to a company with an owner who's a current government official. Now, of course, If we ever get to see President Trump's real taxes and his real info, we might find out that he is the one who actually has gotten more PPP money. So for the moment, my question is, has anyone other than Brett Guthrie gotten more money, PPP money? A company that Brett Guthrie owns, Trace. They got, I believe, more money than any company owned by a government official. President Trump might actually beat that. Now, there's a recent rule change in the House which prohibits members from serving on the boards of publicly traded companies, a prohibition the Senate has already had in place. But Trace Diecast is private, meaning that Guthrie can be a director as long as he's not compensated. So he's an uncompensated member. But there are lots of ways around that, of course. The current ban does not go far enough, says Craig Holman, the government affairs lobbyist at Public Citizen. It should apply to all for-profit boards. There's a bill, House Democrats H.R. 1 was introduced earlier this month, which would prohibit Guthrie and others from sitting on boards of any for-profit, but of course that's not going to pass the Senate. We'll see. Guthrie's investments in his family business are considerable. His 2017, 3 years ago, financial disclosure says that he's on a leave of absence for government service, details his stakes. $1 to $5 million in the Lowell Guthrie Irrevocable Trust, all invested in Trace Diecast. $1 million to $5 million in the Brett Guthrie Gift Trust. Investments in 2 additional trusts without the trust's investment specified. $250,000 to $500,000 in equity, which earned Guthrie between $5,000 and $15,000 in dividends in 2017, and he's also got $50,000 to $100,000 in deferred compensation. This is a really complicated situation, but I think it looks really, really bad. The representative's financial interest in the aluminum business is troubling, says Holman. Under current congressional ethics rules, he's not required to recuse himself from official actions. But Guthrie should recognize the poor optics and voluntarily remove himself from legislation that relates to aluminum. He should probably get off of those committees. Anyway, that's a long way of saying that it's a problem when we have government members who can profit because of their position. Trace Diecast has become very, very successful, or at least Brett Guthrie's part of it, has become very, very successful while he has served in Congress, and his net worth has exploded. This is according to OpenSecrets.org, and we can't really get final, full details yet, so we can't say how far, other than to say he started at $422,000 net worth. At one point in, we want to say 2017, according to Open Secrets, it was close to $7.5 million, $7.6 million. This now sounds like it's substantially more than that. Obviously, that's a problem. And meanwhile, this is a guy who's voting against the post office. How un-American can you be? I think that's pretty un-American. Now, I want to warn you, the next thing I'm going to play you includes naughty words. Lots of them. Lots of naughty words. So if you're going to be distressed by that, if it's going to bother you to hear naughty words, then this would be a good time to turn off. Now, I'm going to say goodbye after this. Tomorrow we're going to have Dr. Greg.
Greg Adams, good Dr. Adams, ask Dr. Greg.
I just love that every time I hear it. And we're going to have John Winkleman joining him as well. We're going to have a bit of a wide-ranging conversation, so that will be tomorrow. Anyway, let's get a look at this. This is from a group called The Juice Media, and this is their latest ad, and it's related to voting in the United States.
Hello, I'm from the United States Postal Service. For more than 200 years, you've counted on us to deliver your mail on time. Neither rain, nor snow, nor sleet, nor hail has kept us from doing our job. But now, for the first time in history, there's something that does. Bullshit. Introducing our new Postmaster General, appointed by the President himself. Does he have experience in running a postal service? Of course not, but he has many years' experience in donating millions of dollars to these guys. That's what makes him perfectly qualified for running the Postal Service. Off a fucking cliff. In just a few weeks, he managed to slow our deliveries down to a trickle, dismantle mail sorting machines across the country, fire and reassign our executives to sow confusion, and abduct mailboxes from your neighborhood. Bullshit! Thankfully, the bullshit was so egregious that it brought the nation together for once, forcing this stooge to back off. for now. Bullshit doesn't just hinder the brave workers of the Postal Service, many of whom have given their lives to keep delivering mail during a deadly pandemic. It also makes it harder for you to vote in the coming election. An election in which millions more will use mail-in ballots to avoid standing in line for hours at a polling station during a deadly pandemic. Does mail-in voting favor one party over another? No. In Colorado, where most people voted by mail, Republicans flipped a Senate seat and won a majority in the state Senate. Is it open to fraud? No. As this big sack of shit admitted under oath, there's no evidence for concern about mail-in ballot fraud. Even this coven of corporate edgelords has said so. Again, in states that mostly use mail-in voting, fraud affected only a handful of ballots out of millions cast. You know what does skew the results of an election? Not voting, which is what all this bullshit is designed to do by eroding your trust in mail-in voting. Bullshit! Some say we need more funding to do our job, but what we really need is less bullshit! And since there's little chance of that, here's how you can ensure your vote is counted in November. Remember how you learned to flatten the curve of the virus so our healthcare system could cope? Well, now it's time to flatten this curve to ensure your postal system can cope with the unprecedented demand for mail-in ballots. You can do this by following these simple steps. First, make sure to check your registered to vote. You can do that here. If your state allows it, vote early. If that entails requesting a mail-in ballot, request it today. Today. Complete your ballot carefully and mail it off as fast as possible to ensure we can get it in by your state's deadline. Late ballots won't be counted. Some states have drop boxes where you can take your ballot in person. Or fuck it, just go to a rich neighborhood and use a mailbox there. It'll arrive on time. None of this favors any one party over the other, but it will ensure that whoever wins the election, we can still claim to be a democracy after this November. U.S. Postal Service. We deliver for you in rain, snow, hail, and even bullshit. Authorized by the Department for Delivering Mail, and also arresting con men on luxury yachts.
Whoops. I just realized I had my mic off. Thank you all for being here. Remember to share. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much here at Getting Angry.